Sonic the Hedgehog is probably one of the most recognized video game characters, if not characters of all time at this point. He's been around in a bunch of games, about 100 games, like 6 TV shows, I think. I don't even know. 2 movies, not counting the OVA, another movie in production, and a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of good stuff, a bunch of toys and merchandise, and even food tie-in products to last a lifetime. So, why am I doing this video? Well, Sonic is a character that I like quite a bit. He shaped my childhood, shaped a lot of childhoods. I didn't start out with the original games, but in order to tell Sonic's story of the first game, I'm going to tell you the history of the character before we get into the game itself. Sega was an arcade giant, and they released a console called the Master System. It wasn't their first console, but the first one that most people think about. And it didn't do too well, in America that is, which is a lucrative market. Japan, they were able to get a little bit of sharehold, but they couldn't compete with the Famicom. In Europe, they actually did not bad. In Brazil, they did amazing. In fact, the console's still being produced there. But it has some problems, so Sega's like, we need to make a more cutting-edge console. They did that with the Sega Mega Drive. The Sega Mega Drive, known as the Sega Genesis, where I come from, America, did a lot better than the Master System, thanks to the cut-through marketing of the American division. Now the Sega of America decided to market it heavily, especially in comparison to Nintendo, saying it's way better. But unfortunately, Nintendo was about to strike back. Genesis came early, but on the horizon, not too far away, Nintendo's sequel to their popular console, the NES or Famicom, came the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom, which was going to be a big hit, because it was going to launch with Mario, who was a great mascot character. And Sega's like, we need that, because our mascot right now, Alex Kidd, he sucks ass. We need to find a way to make a new mascot. So Sega had a board meeting, much like this stock photo I'm using here. They're like, okay, in 1988, they're like, alright, we need to have a competition, alright? There's a competition, in-house competition. We need a new mascot that rival Nintendo's Mario. A game that could sell over millions of copies. And a character that could be as iconic as Mickey Mouse and replace Alex Kidd. He sucks. So, what did they come up with? One of the first ideas, coming from 1989, was a game called Twin Stars, which was illustrated by Nato Oshima. Very important name, keep that in mind. It was about 2 brothers who fought a villain named 13. Creative name, I know. They're twins, as you can see. But, yeah, the engine was based off a gameplay mechanics made by Yuji Naka, who liked to speed run, another important name, by the way, Yuji Naka, who liked to speed run Mario Bros. Before it was really popular. Super Mario Bros. To be exact, not the arcade Mario Bros., but you know what I mean. And he liked the idea, so he made a physics engine with loopy loops, and Yuji Naka designed a game around it. They liked the idea of the concept of the running fast, but these 2 twin guys, they got scrapped. But those loops in the background, they didn't. During our rough pitches, the characters that were posed included a wolf, bulldog, robot, and warrior character, whatever that means. But when the game came out, the speed engine that Yuji Naka developed, they wanted a kangaroo that was fast. So it's just a kangaroo. I wouldn't associate kangaroos as being fast, but whatever. Squirrels, and they got rid of animals that weren't, including one character. This guy right here, you might recognize him from Sonic Superstars. This was one of the finalized designs for a character developing game. It was going to be about a rabbit who uses his ears to grab enemies and objects in the level. While this game never materialized, this character model did reappear as a Easter egg in Sonic Superstars. However, the game was later reused for another Sonic Team game. Sonic Team would be the people who made Sonic, would eventually became their own development team, basically. And eventually they took the ideas of this game and made Rise Star, an underrated game from the Sega Genesis that not many people talk about. Only one game came out, and Sonic Team never made another one. But it's pretty good. Eventually, the mascots were narrowed down to 2 because these 2 animals could roll into balls, an armadillo and a hedgehog. The armadillo is not Mighty Armadillo, actually. That's kind of a misconception. He was created a little afterwards. The idea did translate to that character, but that's beside the point. So, Naito Oshima, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, I'm really bad at pronunciation, decided to make Mr. Harinamiya. I don't know how to pronounce that. Let me go to Google Translate. And that translates to Mr. Needlemouse. And you're wondering, why is it called Needlemouse? He's a hedgehog. Well, if you don't know, Needlemouse is 2 words that Japan uses to call a hedgehog. That's what they call hedgehogs. Well, they don't call it that. They call it the word I can't pronounce because I'm illiterate. But, yeah, it's not really that weird, because hedgehog's a weird name when you think about it, because they don't, I mean, this doesn't look like a hedge or a hog. Where's the hedge? And it definitely doesn't look like a pig. I mean, it's not a mouse at all. It's not a rodent, but needle mouse makes a little more sense. At least it's kind of similar to a mouse. It's bigger and it has needles on its back. So there you go, needle mouse. Also, hedgehogs are some of the cutest animals ever. I mean, look at this guy's face. He's so adorable. One thing I didn't mention is that Sonic was meant to be a character to appeal to a Western audience. After all, the American market was very lucrative, and Nintendo had a tight grasp on it, even though Sega was making a little bit of cut through with their ad campaign. This still didn't have enough to really sink in the deal. So, Natsuo Oshima, who took a vacation to New York City, went to Central Park and workshopped basically different designs. Of course, his design for the Hedgehog character, Mr. Needle Mouse, later known as Sonic the Hedgehog, was the favorite by everybody there. Though, however, a certain character a very odd character was voted second, and that character would eventually go in the game. That character being, this was the character that people voted second. This funny man in pajamas with a giant mustache. Quite an odd character, indeed, but this character they decided, people seem to take a little keen interest in this character. They're going to keep him in the game. Of course, this character would eventually be redesigned completely into the villain of the game, Dr. Eggman, as they called him. Let's give a moment to prayer to all their rejected designs. Here's our Bulldog design. Looks really odd, like why is it with the bandage? A little too much detail, and really not too interesting. Plus, Bulldogs are too generic. I don't know why every school has to use Bulldog as a mascot, including my own school. Here is the wolf concept art for the mascot. Not terrible design, a little goofy, and the American flag is just... I know you're trying to appeal to a Western audience, but it's just too much. It's just too goofy looking. Though, and funny enough, the American wolves would appear in a very infamous animated show that also had Hedgehog in the name. Let me know what animated TV show that is in the comments below if you know what I'm referencing. Let's look at this sly parakeet. Not a bad design. In fact, they would actually kind of keep the design for a scrap content feature that was never made into the Sonic game, unfortunately. This design really went through no remarks. This is supposed to be a porcupine, but it obviously didn't catch on because there's not much of a design here. This design is just pathetic. I mean, was anyone hoping to win a contest with this thing? This is like an alien bunny of some sort. I'm not too sure. It's interesting, but, as a mascot, it's kind of weird. They even decided that Bart Simpson as an old man would be a good idea for a concept art. I mean, I know this isn't Bart, but this is a weird guy. Very interesting looking guy, but yeah, too Mario-esque. If you couldn't tell by the overalls. We already know what they're trying to go for, but too much Mario, since apparently, according to them, Alex Kidd was too much like Mario, even though it didn't look anything like him. And this guy was really generic. I mean, he's bland looking and obviously didn't seem to go for much development. And all those designs got scrapped for this design. This is the finalized design that Sega went. Sonic the Hedgehog. His original color was teal, apparently, but they changed it to blue to match the Sega logo, but they made it dark blue so he would not contrast against the sky backgrounds or water textures, and that's why he's blue. According to his creator, Natsuo Oshima, he was created with Felix the Cat and Mickey Mouse as the inspiration for his design. His shoes are one of the weirdest things ever. They were based on Michael Jackson's boots from Bad in colors of Santa Claus. And the reason why they use those colors is because Oshima said they are the most famous characters in the world. Take it that way you will. And the funniest thing is, his personality was based off President Bill Clinton. I'm not joking. They got the attitude from President of the time, Bill Clinton. You can't make this stuff up. Even though Sonic was designed, there was a lot of weird quirks in the way, like what's ever going on in this image. This is one of the rough translations to whatever they're supposed to be. So the 13 villain was still there. Eggman's a bumblebee. There's weird enemies that are hands and goblins and an exclamation mark and a cannon man. It was weird, and the weirdest one is that Sonic had a human girlfriend named Madonna. Sega America pretty much hated all this stuff. In fact, they didn't even want Sonic to be a hedgehog. So they're like, alright, we'll get rid of all this stuff, but Sonic has to be a hedgehog. And that's basically what happened there. So all this crap got scrapped. During this dispute with Sega of America over concept designs, they decided that the villain here, who Japan called Dr. Eggman, that they like the name Dr. Robotnik better, or Dr. Ivo Robotnik, as they would call him. This was not really approved by the Sega of Japan, but they let America do whatever they wanted because they wanted this character to be marketed to Japan. And so, eventually, the two names got split. For the fact this character obviously was always originally called Eggman, due to the fact that a lot of things in the classic Sonic games reference to eggs like the Death Egg, the fact Eggman appears on Wing Fortress and Egg Robos. Some people will not go over the fact that this guy, his original name was supposed to be Eggman. His whole thing insists that his name be Robotnik. But we'll get to that when we get to Sonic Adventure, if I ever get there. So, Sonic the Hedgehog was initialized as a Mario game. What I mean by that is that the gameplay was inspired by Yuji Naka's love for Super Mario Bros., especially trying to be as fast as possible. And the reason that the Rabbit game got scrapped was because they couldn't really keep the pace up. Eventually they would make that into the game, but they thought it didn't really work what they're trying to go for. Sonic just seemed to be a natural fit for the engine that Yuji Naka was developing, and eventually developed some great slope and momentum-based physics that wasn't really seen in any video game at the time, which is pretty nice. But the one problem was that Sonic was too fast when they first marketed. People, test audiences said, were getting dizzy and stuff because of how fast he was moving. So they actually slowed him down, believe it or not, which is actually a pretty interesting thing, if you ask me. Another unique thing about Sonic's gameplay was the fact it was designed around one button. This would eventually bite Yuji Naka in the ass when he tried to implement it later games, and look at me die there. Great footage for Kyle. But yeah, the one button was a great idea at the time, make it simple for gamers, especially during this time when, even though video games have been around for a while, there's still a lot of noobs in the industry, Not everyone played games, or a lot of adults sucked at games. But hey, making one button for everything was pretty easy. You jump, and you hit everything as a ball. Pretty nice, if you ask me. Though Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was almost finished, it had a problem. There was only 7 people making this game. The 7 people, of course, formed the Sonic team, and they included a bunch of great people, obviously. But they weren't able to put everything they wanted in the game. The most famous scrapped idea was Sonic's Rock Band. It was going to feature a bunch of cool jazzing animals, and Sonic's going to breakdance. These guys would really only be featured in the sound test menu. And this was scrapped because they ran out of time. But they had a lot of empty space for what was this band, and they put the famous Sega logo. That takes up most of the space in the cartridge, which is kind of funny. These band members would never return. They all have Sonic shoes, which is kind of weird. The parakeet obviously redesigned and reused. But yeah, those three of the animal buddies would only appear in the Archie comic as a background, like reference. However, that one crocodile would eventually become a character known as Vector the Crocodile, who would become a Sonic mainstay. So that's pretty interesting. Most of the development time actually was dedicated to just one level, Green Hill Zone. It was inspired by basically vaporware of the time, 3D rendering, which is why you have those little indentations in the terrain there. Sonic's gameplay was trying to be worked out, and where they worked it out was in this level, 3 acts, and they worked pretty well to get the game and players into the game. Though, of course, the main problem with this game is that the other levels weren't as much as developed as this level, so they are a little archaic compared to Green Hill Zone. However, Green Hill Zone would eventually become a staple due to its great level design, and be reused constantly by Sega to the detriment of a lot of players, actually. The music of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise is iconic, and it all started with Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Sega decided that they wanted somebody with a little bit of musical experience, so they hired Masuda Nakamura. Hope I said that right. He's a bassist and songwriter of the band Dreams Come True, which you probably don't know about because it's a Japanese band, so yeah. But if you do know about it, you also can see me die again in spikes. I did that again. But he was not... His background was not in video games, so he actually did not know how to compose video game music. So instead of writing for the video game, he basically wrote for what he called a movie. Based off the little stuff he got from the game, he composed music. For example, the programmers would take this... Hearing the original Master Green Hill Zone is really magical. And they would code it into... In 1990, Sega would showcase this demo at the Tokyo Toy Show. Unfortunately, there's very little footage of this. This is actually a fan recreation of what it looked like. Sega lost it. It was originally going to be part of the Mega Collection, which would have been really cool, even though it's not much gameplay to it. It's pretty neat. It basically says, well, get ready for Sonic coming next year. When all was said and done, Sonic was ready to be given to the world. After playtesting that showcased that Sonic was actually preferred over Mario, they were ready to release it. And Sonic released June 23rd, 1991, which also became known as Sonic's official birthday. So happy birthday, Sonic. Not right now because it's not June, but hey, I had to say happy birthday to a great character. Now that we know the history of the game, let's start with the story of the game. The story is about this guy, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, as he's known in English. He is an evil, basically. It begins on South Island, an island known for a treasure that had, including the Chaos Emeralds, 6 gemstones, 6, not 7, who have basically weird powers that can do a lot of stuff. And it causes the island to move all the time. And that's, I guess, their excuse why Green Hill Zone's everywhere, because it just moves to the location that they need. So Eggman wants to take these and such like that. He built a scrap brain, and Sonic arrives on the island. He defeats Eggman, and yeah, Eggman is evil, and he turns the cute little wooden critters into Badniks, or robots. They're known as Badniks in the U.S. I'm not sure if they're called that in Japan. Alright, so that's the story. It's pretty basic. Sonic needs to free his animal buddies from the robots and stop Dr. Eggman's evil plan, or Robotnik, whatever you want to call him is fine by me. He's technically both of them. He's all of me. So yeah, the gameplay is pretty basic as described in the making of part. Sonic can move left and right, and the more he runs, the faster he gets. He has gravity, so he goes downhill, he'll go faster. He goes uphill, he'll go a little slower. But if he keeps going and keep maintaining it by jumping and stuff like that, you can get pretty far. Pretty fast, indeed. Also, he has one button, and it's a jump button. And you cannot do a spin dash in this game, unfortunately. But if you do run fast, if you're running fast and you press down, you can spin into a ball, which is pretty nice. Since Sonic is basically a ball of spikes, everything he hits basically gets destroyed unless it's a projectile, like those buzz bombers there. There's quite a few different little enemies in the game. We'll be going over them because why not? They're interesting enough. And why not we do that right now? Our first enemy is the Goomba of the Sonic universe, the Motobug. He's a ladybug robot that can just move, basically. If Sonic touches him when he's not in ball mode, he gets hurt, basically. Nothing too special about this guy, but he does appear a lot. And he's pretty cute, actually. There's the Buzz Bomber. It's a wasp that shoots projectiles. This guy's also a recurring enemy that'll appear in multiple Sonic games. It's your basic flying enemy. There's Crab Meat, a crab that slowly moves around the ground and it shoots projectiles from its claws. I don't like these guys. These guys suck. They're annoying, but they're not really interesting either, so they can suck. They can go suck an egg. There's Chopper, who's a fish that will only chop up from bridges, basically. Not too hard. They don't really do much other than jump up and down. There's Neutron, a chameleon guy that will be camouflaged and then shoot a projectile. They're actually kind of rare and they'll fly at you. They're not really interesting though. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, that guy exists. I forgot about him because he sucks. There's the Caterpillar, which are pretty annoying because they can't jump on them because they got the spikes on there, so you got to roll into them, which is a lot harder to do in Sonic 1, so you don't have to spin dash. So these guys suck. They are also a never recurring enemy. Pretty much all these enemies are recurring. There's Batbrain. Great names, I know. These guys fly around in cave areas, and yeah, they basically just fly at you. They don't shoot anything at you, so they're kind of like a lamer version of Buzz Bomber. There's also Spikes here, who is like the Caterpillar, except, not as annoying and less common, so he's really not interesting. There's Roller, who's an armadillo guy. He looks really weird. Where's his arms go? I don't see a capsule for his arms, but whatever. And he'll, in certain levels, like I think one level, he'll roll down at you and then just stop. And that's about it. He's pretty fast. He's as fast as Sonic, but other than that, Roller really isn't that interesting of a guy. He's just an enigma. Burrow bots are bots who, by their name, burrow in the ground, and they jump up at Sonic, and that's pretty much all they do. A later version of these guys will appear in Sonic 2 known as Grounder, and that's the more iconic version, but this isn't Grounder. It's a burrow bot. He's got a nice hat, though. The next enemy is Jaws, not confused with the shark, are the same name, and these are like piranha guys who swim left and right. I'm not sure, because they just swim right at you during the Labyrinth Zone level. The next enemy, or the Orbinauts, they have different types, and they're just little balls that throw spikes at you. They'll throw 4 balls. When they're out, they're done. There's different types of these guys. Some throw flames, or balls that don't go away. and they're really not that worth noting the differences. These guys will reappear in different names, but does it really matter? No, it does not. The last enemy is a ball hog, and ball hogs, well, they're hogs who throw balls at you, and really not that interesting. They kind of stand there and throw balls at you. And yeah, this is the last Badnik in the game. But that's not all the Badniks. If you can tell from this old Tomy toy lineup, this guy made it so far, they got a toy but never appeared in game. It is Splats the Rabbit, who appeared in even spin-off material at the time, like the comic books. He was a rabbit who jumped at you. Yeah, he's a very enigma of a character since he appeared in a lot of stuff, but he never really appeared in game until Sonic Mania, where they finally put him as an actual enemy. So Splats the Rabbit finally got justice. Inside these Badniks are animal buddies, basically, and they're just little animals that run around, don't really do much. The most notable one is Flicky, who I covered his game, or her game, in the previous game. And yeah, these guys are pretty neat. The most neat thing about them is that 3 of them got different names, English translation names. I think a couple of them might have, but most notably, the Pocky the Rabbit was named Johnny Lightfoot in the by Sega America. Picky was named Porker Lewis. And the most notable is the Ricky character was named Sally Acorn, a character that was put in the Sonic media, but not in the Japanese one. Also, the chicken's name is Cucky, but in recent games, he's been renamed to Clucky. I know, Cucky is funny. Another notable thing about the American translations, the last time we talk about it, is the box art changes. Sonic was made for intended for American audiences, so this design here is what they thought was going to be shown, but Sega America decided that they wanted him to be more edgy, even though this box art is really poppin', if you couldn't tell. They reused this elements in later Sonic games. And like all the Japanese Sonic games, if you don't know this, they come with an inspirational quote in them. For the Japanese Sonic one, it is, don't just sit there and waste your precious time. When you want to do something, do it right away. Do it when you can. It's the only way to live a life without regrets. Yeah, every Japanese Sonic game, I think the only classic ones, have these inspirational quotes, which is really funny. Sonic was given a slight redesign in the United States by Greg Weisman, who did pretty much all the American box art for Sonic, and he made Sonic edgier. He's a lot fatter, and most notably, he has a mohawk. The mohawk was also translated into comics and media at the time. I'm not actually quite like this. It does have that certain attitude that the Japanese one, even though it's better, was missing, and that was trying to be what Sonic was about. I mean, he is based off Bill Clinton, after all. And they also released plushies to go along with the game, only in Japan. And oddly enough, the Sonic plush isn't that rare, so I'm going to need to pick them up one day. We got an Eggman, a Pocky, a Flicky, and a Pecky. So yeah, I like to have the Sonic plush here. He's known as Stringy Sonic. Sorry for the bad image. But yeah, if I mentioned that these are the first Sonic plushes. However, not the first Sonic plush. This is the first ever Sonic plush. When they finally finalized Sonic, they pitched this guy to Sega, and they liked it. And basically all the concept they had for Sega Japan. And I'm not sure who designed this plush. I know who designed Sonic, and that's the person who currently owns this iconic plush, Natsudo Oshima. He's got a nice little wristwatch there, by the way, of a Sonic game. And this is an iconic plush, so luckily he's in a collection of the guy who co-created Sonic, so in well-observed hands. So that is pretty much everything there is to know about the background of Sonic. I've been talking a lot too much about that. There's also stuff like power-ups. They aren't the most interesting thing in the world, but there's basically monitors around the world, and they have a shield, which gives Sonic extra hit, a ring monitor gives him extra rings, extra life gives him extra life, defensibility, which works as a star, like all the Mario games, and a speed shield makes Sonic faster, as fast as he originally going to be in the original game. And of course, the most notable thing about Sonic is that there's rings everywhere. Not coins, rings, and these aren't currency. The rings are used to keep Sonic's life. You see, it's because the way Sonic's gameplay works, that he could get hit a lot by enemies due to the fact that he's so fast, and not every player can react to that. So instead of just punching the player, the game decides, like, okay, if you can keep your rings, you won't die. Which is a pretty great feature, actually. I really like it. So you collect rings, the more rings you have, the more chances you have of picking them up again. And I think it's a really great concept, which, well, more games are more lenient now, but at the time that was a great feature. Basically having a nice little cushion to help you. You can get hit, but you need to collect your rings so that you don't die. It's not like you get hit and you die. No, you just got to pick them back up again, which is a great system. Of course, these rings are important because if you get 50 rings in the end of the level, you can go to the special stage. Like I am going right here. Special stage is very weird. It's trippy as hell. And in them is the Chaos Emeralds. collect all 6 Chaos Emeralds at the end of each act. They can all be collected on Act 1 and 2, because Act 3 is the boss level. And you can get the good ending, which really doesn't change that much from the regular ending. So yeah, that is all the little features in Sonic 1. Nothing too noteworthy. Of course, the whole train is based off like an amusement park, where Sonic's going crazy around like a fast crap. Of course, there's also springs and such. So Green Hill Zone is our first level. It is considered the best level in the game, and I think I'm going back to the old playthrough where I thought I was doing levels going over there. There's a lot of secrets in Green Hill Zone. There's little tricks and neat stuff. There's 3 pathways in each of these levels for the most part. This will be translated better in later games, but in Sonic, most of the time, there's 3 pathways. There's the upper path, the middle path, and the lower path. The upper path is the hardest path to maintain, but it's the fastest one. The middle path is the regular path, and the lower path is for people who are failing and get stuck, basically. So that's one interesting thing about the way Sonic level games are designed, only in the classic games for the most part. Later games won't really do that, especially 3D. But the alternate pathways are part of Sonic, and most Sonic games have them. Though this 3-path structure like that isn't in every Sonic game, because you can't really do that in 3D. I mean, you can, but you know. Of course, there's many secrets in the Sonic games. Most Sonic games reward you for exploration, unless you're dumb like me and jump into spikes. Of course, Sonic 1 is an infamous spike glitch where you jump on the spikes in a row, you can die, which is not what it's meant to do. Sonic, like I said, has rings that help him keep his lives, but he can automatically die 2 ways, despite your ring count. That being falling in a bottomless pit, which there isn't too many, so you don't have to worry about that, and getting crushed. For some reason, Sonic can't get crushed, which is a shame. He really needs to focus on lifting those crushing material above his head. So Green Hill Zone is pretty great. It's green, it's marbled, it's very vaporware, and has quite a few enemies to get you used to the game. Originally there was going to be some weird ball floating around this level, but that was scrapped, obviously. The enemies, which we already went over, include the Motobug, Buzz Bomber, Neutron, and Crab Meat and Chopper. So it has quite a few enemies, but not be too hard. And the level design is great enough where you shouldn't have any problems. There's also checkpoints in Sonic. I forgot to mention that. If you hit a checkpoint, it's you know how checkpoints work. And Sonic 1 is unique since it has 3 acts. In the end of 3rd act for Green Hill Zone, at the end of Act 3 for Green Hill Zone, you will find our first boss. Our first encounter with the dreaded Doctor himself. And his first boss is called the Egg Wrecker. Eggman has the nice vaporware ball, which was originally going to be in the main level, and he's swinging it around at Sonic. This is actually a bit of a tricky boss fight if you don't know what you're doing, and even the pros can get hit multiple times with this guy. But after a couple hits, Eggman takes 8 hits in pretty much every game to defeat. He runs away, and you'll find an egg capsule, which will free all your animal buddies, and they'll all be happy and free. There's also a nice little system here at the end, where you get scores. Now, unfortunately, this slows down the game a bit, especially if you do really good. It's actually kind of a nuisance. However, you can get, in special stages in there, you can get extra lives, which is nice. Continues, if you will. They're kind of worthless in modern day, but that's just how it works. So Green Hill Zone is considered one of the best levels in Sonic, pretty much video game history. It's well designed and has a lot of interesting stuff, like this little spiky bar thing, whatever you call it. And it became a Sonic staple for a reason. Even though originally it wasn't really that used that often, it did appear, but it wasn't over-appeared like it is in modern day, which is a shame. It's a good level, but oversaturation can make anything seem bad. The next zone in the game is Marble Zone, which is actually a very different zone. In fact, the zone structure for the Sonic 1 is originally going to be a lot different. The original idea was to make the zones kind of relate to how close you are getting to Scrap Brain. So the first levels would be more grassy and natural. The later levels would be more industrial. However, that doesn't correlate to how difficult they are. In fact, Labyrinth Zone was originally going to be the 2nd or 3rd act, which has been awful. Marble Zone is a lot more generic when it comes to level design. It does not utilize Sonic speed as much. You'll be doing a lot of wading. It's not bad, but other than the above part area, you're going to have to be pushing blocks and all that sort of fun stuff. And yeah, pushing blocks isn't the most fun thing to do in the world, but it's something you gotta do to get rid of these spike chandeliers. This level game is just really made for waiting here. You're waiting for block patterns to come out, and it's very un-Sonic-like. There's quite a few bits of that. It'll throw you off, especially after playing Green Hill Zone, because you won't find anything like this in that level. It's, like I said, nothing too bad, but it is very jarring. Especially if you play a lot of Sonic games. You'll be like, why is this designed this way? Well, it's designed because Green Hill Zone was the most designed level, and the rest of these levels weren't given as much time. If they got more development time, they probably would have had a better Marble Zone. Not as a bad act, but, you know, they could have used a lot more better pacing, if you will. Act 2 of Marble Zone actually gives us something unique, a set piece. Set pieces are usually a unique part of the level that's kind of cinematic. In Sonic 1, we got this lava following you. As I'm showcasing here, unfortunately my mouse is in the way, I don't know why I did that in my live stream, that the lava here is incredibly slow. So while it's interesting, it's super easy to not get killed there. I know it's probably just an introduction, but I've never died here, and I played this level like at least like 100 times in my lifetime. And like I seriously have never died. Not even as a joke, I haven't died there. That's how easy it is to avoid the lava. It's interesting, but that's something I thought you should know to mention. Act 3 has a shortcut here, which if you don't know, you go over the chandeliers, you get extra life, and you cut quite a bit of the level, which is pretty nice. And there is a lot of tricky-dicky platforming, as I call it, where you have to jump on chandeliers, and if you don't do it, you don't die. You fall down, you have to do it all over again, which is something that I struggled a lot at as a kid. Interesting thing about this level is that there's not many enemies. You'll only find the Bat Brain, Buzz Bombers, and Caterpillars. So not too many enemies that should throw you off your game, but there's going to be a lot of traps and a lot of platforming, so that keeps you on your toes. Your little hedgehog toes, if you will. The boss fight in this level is the Egg Scorcher. Eggman is shooting fire at 2 platforms. You gotta jump at him and avoid it. Well, once again, Eggman takes 8 hits and he's done. Pretty basic. You can get hit, but once again, if you have rings, it should be fine. Nothing too difficult. The next zone is Spring Zone, a kind of industrial city that, much like the same name says, is full of springs, and I guess it's the yard too, where that means. There's a lot more enemies, but a lot more momentum and speed. So, yeah, it's a mix of both Marble and Green Hill Zone. This zone is known for the fact that it has words in the background, like cope. Why is the word cope here? Though, one of the reasons that I'm not the biggest fan of this level is that these moving platforms are a nightmare. Not really a nightmare, they're not that bad, but yeah, you can get shot through them. It just it's very oddly slow, especially compared to the rest of the level. It really isn't like this. However, there are some shortcuts to get rid of those, but there is some great momentum, unlike in Marble Zone. So yeah, Spring Zone is pretty neat. There's tons of switches and unique moving platforms, and it's a lot. There's actually multiple different paths. Marble Zone actually was lacking a lot of those alternate paths. Like most of the time, there's only like one path to take, while Spring Zone here decides that, going back to the Green Hill Zone way, of making more than one path to take, higher, mid, and low, much like Green Hill Zone. There's a lot more enemies in this level than there are in the previous ones, including Crab Meat, Buzz Bomber, Roller, and Spikes. So, not too much enemies. There are a couple, and some of them are annoying. The Crab Meats in this level can be placed very annoyingly, especially since they have a weird shooting pattern. There are also a lot of spring traps here. Not to confuse the Final Phrase character with the same name. You know, the actual traps full of springs. And yes, you can get stuck in there. So be careful there, guys. Be careful with the springs. The boss of this level is the Egg Stinger. Eggman stabs a part of that level and it breaks away. So if you fall down there, you die. I don't think I've ever died there, but who the knows? Maybe I did in this playthrough. I don't think so. But yeah, whoever you're on, Eggman's gonna sting you. You gotta hit him in 8 hits. So it is a little dangerous, but at the same time, it's nothing too hard, even though there's a lot higher stakes than the other levels. We get to the most infamous Sonic level of all time, Labyrinth Zone. Yeah. Some people struggle on Marble Zone because it's not as intuitive as Green Hill Zone, but Labyrinth Zone is a test of patience. Because you do not get rid of Hedgehog fact wrong, the fact being hedgehogs can swim, so hedgehogs can't swim. I don't even know why you would even read that. So the reason that gave me the idea, let's make a really slow level. Yeah, character all about going fast is now moving slow as molasses underwater. It is a gameplay gimmick that a lot of people don't like. Well, most water levels are about character swimming. Here, it's about not drowning, as if you drown, music will play, and it will make you shit your pants at how scared you are. But it's not the best thing in the world. Labyrinth Zone is an iconic level, and it has some interesting, ruins in the background. A lot of that was something that was used in the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie. It's not a bad level to look at. It's just a bad level to play. There is a lot of shortcuts in this level to skip it, but some of them are pretty hard. Like the switch puzzle around this area which is so easy to miss the jump, and I constantly do it. And if you don't get it, you have to play for the whole level. And you constantly have to stop for these air bubbles, because Sonic he just can't hold his breath that long, so you're just waiting your time till the bubbles come up, and sometimes they'll come the last second right as you die. So not a fun experience, to say the least. There's enemies this level, like our Jaws, the Orbinauts, and Burrowbot. The most annoying thing are these spike things, because jumping around them is kind of annoying, and if you get hit, Sonic's fall damage is so slow, and you have to get air bubbles again. It is not fun at all. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to do this level. Yuji Naka, why did you read your Hedgehog facts better next time, okay? Though yes, as he said, Hedgehogs can't swim. Well, only Sonic in the Sonic universe can't swim, though it's not really mentioned as a fear of him in the game, only in extended media. It's something that he's afraid of, because he can't swim. Even though he doesn't seem to care in this game, he seems to be not fazed by it at all. Because, Sonic doesn't have much expression on his face when he's in neutral mode in this game. But yes, Sonic does not like swimming, and you know what? I can't blame him. If he had to go for levels like Labyrinth Zone, I would relate to Sonic. The spear traps in this level are almost impossible to dodge. These are so unpredictable. They are predictable, but at the same time, it's really tricky to get past them right. And especially the slowdown that comes from getting hit is super annoying. We also got this nice little thing here. We have to wait for the water rise on Act 3 here. In Act 2 or 3, you get this nice water slide, which is actually pretty fun. But you have to jump in just the right area in order to get past the next part of the level. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can get stuck here for a while, actually. So I guess it's not that great when it comes down to it. So this level's bad. Well, it gets worse. The boss fight isn't a boss fight. The boss fight known as Eggmobile, and if you miss these sponges here, you just die, like I just did here. After rising to the top of the water, you find Eggman, who's just in his Eggmobile, and you gotta chase after him. Not too bad, however, there's a bunch of projectiles shooting at you, which are pretty hard to dodge as you're trying to jump up. Not only that, it gets worse because the water's rising, and you only have a limited time to get out of there. And Sonic's jumping is so slow underwater. His speed is bad, but his jumping's worse, and sometimes you have to dodge two things at once, and if you get hit once like that, you just die, and game over. If you beat Labyrinth Zone, which is pretty hard to do, even for veterans like me, you get rewarded with Starlight Zone, one of my favorite zones in the game. One, the music is beautiful. The other great part of this level are in fact mouse curses in a way. There's some momentum-based platforming, unlike a lot of the other Sonic levels which really lack it, especially Labyrinth Zone, which is mostly just slogging underwater. We find alternate pathways, upper, middle, and lower paths. We get fun obstacles to dodge, less waiting, more secrets to be found. It's a great level, and just a nice feeling. I get a really good feeling whenever I play this level. And there's only 2 enemies in this level. Bomb, which is a character that I didn't go over because I guess there was no artwork of it, and the Orbinauts, who are pretty easy to dodge. Over and all, there's a lot of momentum to get in this level, and it's a super fun level. In fact, it's one of the easiest levels in the game, despite the fact it's the second to last level in the game, if that makes any sense. One of the things that Starlight Zone introduces is these spike ball, what do you call them, teeter-totters, where you gotta avoid getting hit by spike ball, but if you do land one, you get to jump high in the air. This little gimmick's was reused in later Sonic games, so don't be surprised to see that again. The boss fight uses those teeter-totters because it's the Egg Spiker. He shoots more spike ball bombs, and they explode. So you gotta avoid those, but you can also hit them at them. Also, if the spike ball lands on the other side, Sonic can jump up and hit Eggman. So we have multiple ways of hitting him. So it's a really fun boss fight. Like I said, 8 hits, really good, well-designed, multiple ways to fight your enemy. And it's a little bit of a challenge, not too hard, but it's very interesting. This boss fight is really great, and so is his level. Too bad it's kind of hard to get to, because you have to go through a Labyrinth Zone to get to this level, but whatever. The last zone is Scrap Brain Zone, Eggman's base. Why is it called Scrap Brain? Well, I don't know. This level has amazing music, and it's pretty tricky, but not really unfair tricky. It is hard, but it's not like Labyrinth Zone where it's just really annoying. Here we got a lot of obstacles, but we have different pathways, a lot of moving platforms, a couple enemies, but in a lot of death traps. This place feels like a final level, and it just feels epic, like you're just racing towards to fight Eggman and give him a piece of your mind. This level also has a lot of crushing, so beware of that. Like this section here, not too hard, but hey, if you mess up, you get crushed. Eggman is throwing a lot of stuff at you. Electric balls, shockers, fire coming out of the floor. It's just craziness everywhere you go. You don't know what traps next to you. It is giving you a lot of stuff so you can take the damage, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff you gotta deal with. Sonic's gotta deal with a lot of pain here. From invisible platforms, falling platforms, caterpillars, and all sorts of stuff. In Act 2, we get these little spinning conveyor balls, and what they do is Sonic rolls on them, he gets a crap ton of momentum, he can jump off them, and get shot into outer space, basically. I mean, geez Louise, that's super fast. Probably the fastest you're ever going to go in Sonic 1. But hey, it's super fun. If only they had more of it in the rest of the game. Notable things is there's elevators that shoot you away up and down the whole Scrap Brain Zone. This is how Eggman gets around, if you were wondering. It's like Marble Zone, there's more death traps than enemies, but there's still actually quite a few enemies. They just don't appear as often, including Ball Hog, Bomb, Burrowbot, Caterpillar, Jaws, and Orbinaut. This is the only level that Ball Hog appears in case you're wondering. So something strange happens after we pass Act 2. Sonic runs and he sees Eggman. Eggman presses a switch, and Act 3 is not Act 3 of Scrap Brain Zone, even though it is. Scrap Brain Zone Act 3, for some reason, is Labyrinth Zone Act 4. The only good thing about this is there's an easy shortcut to do in order to get past this part really quick so you don't have to deal with Labyrinth Zone crap. You run past this really quick, and unfortunately for there, I missed it. But that's okay. If you go down there, underneath it, unlike me getting a game over, you get a shortcut that takes you right to Eggman. Making sure you take that shortcut, you'll end up in Final Zone, the final boss of the game, in the real Scrap Brain final act. Sonic has 0 rings, but he's going into this boss fight, and Eggman is shooting all the stuff he can think of, which is basically trying to crush Sonic, knowing that it's one instant kill. Not that it matters since you have 1 ring, so you're gonna die. 0 rings, so you're gonna die anyway. So Eggman's gonna shoot plasma balls. They're pretty easy to jump through, and random pillars of 4, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, will come up or down at you, trying to crush you. So you gotta be careful which one's coming at you, and you gotta make sure you hit Eggman just the right way. There's a glitch, famously here, where if you hit Eggman extra time as soon as you're hitting the last hit, which is the 8th hit, you remember, this boss would go on forever. But it's not too difficult, but it is a little tricky, especially if you're a noob at Sonic. But if you beat him, you chase him out. Of course, Sonic being the hero he is, he defeats Eggman, his contraption explodes, and he chases after Eggman. And Eggman is, well, faster than Sonic, so he catches up, but Sonic hits him, and that is the end of Sonic the Hedgehog 1. And with that, you get 1 of 2 endings. The first ending is the ending that most people get, is where Sonic runs back to Green Hill Zone, and all the ammo blades are there. But he didn't collect all the cast emeralds, so he doesn't get the bonus part. So Sonic just runs around and says, "Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you for playing my game." If you collected all 6 cast emeralds in this terribly grainy footage, Sonic will launch them into the sky, and they will create flowers. And that's the only difference. Yeah, not much of an incentive to collect 6 cast emeralds, is it? So with this ending, you get a nice disgruntled Eggman hitting the end sign, which is different from when you don't collect all the Chaos Emeralds. Eggman will say, "Try again, sucker!" But it's really not worth it, because all you get is flowers. Not much incentive to collect Chaos Emeralds in this game, unlike future games. Sonic the Hedgehog was a success, in case you're wondering. The game did sell over millions of copies, and it ended up making the Sega Genesis #1 holiday item in 1991, outselling the launch of the Super Nintendo. Quite drastically, actually. Sonic's campaign worked. The game looked cool, it was interesting, people liked it a lot, and the Genesis was cheaper, so Sega had a mascot. In fact, Sega America immediately made Sonic the mascot of Sega, and he's pretty much became the mascot ever since. And, it makes sense. Sonic's first gaming intro is pretty good, despite flaws like Labyrinth Zone, and you can see why. He's a great character, and they marketed him very well. And the cheaper price point made him a lot more appealing than the Super Nintendo, which was a lot more expensive. Sure, people knew who it was, but Sonic looked cool and cutting edge. Despite the fact that he was on a cheaper hardware, he seemed like a more appealing character because of that. He was an underdog, but a scrappy one, and the edgy 90s really wanted a character with a little bit of edge, and he was perfect for that decade.
Now you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
What's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis. Hey, look at these radical colors, huh?
Wow, Sonic's fast, too.
No, over here.
I like Genesis, and it costs a lot less.
Wait, kid, that game
I'll
there.
take Sonic and Genesis.
I knew that.
Sonic the Hedgehog. More action, more speed. Sega Genesis, it's a whole lot more for less.
If you want to play Sonic the Hedgehog 1 right now, you have a lot of options. Here is the Sega Genesis price. It is one of the easiest games to find on Sega Genesis, so if you don't have this game, I don't know what you're doing. This game was packaged with pretty much every Sega Genesis when it came out as a marketing campaign for the Genesis. It ended up working very well for Sega America. Eventually it was swapped out for Sonic 2, but the Not For Resale, which is the one that came with Genesis, is very common. 20 complete, $11 loose. If you have a Genesis, you don't have this game, I don't know what, you need to pick it up now. Though if you want to buy this version, the most authentic way to play it, you are probably going to buy a Genesis, more likely, more than anything. Because if you don't have it, if you have a Genesis, don't have this game, then I don't even know. Is that even possible to have a Genesis about Sonic 1 or 2? There's actually other releases of Sonic 1 on the Genesis, like compilation tracks. They're not really interesting, but here's one Sonic Classics. It's actually not too expensive, and it comes with 3 games, so yeah, if you see this game, pick it up. I've never seen it, so I'm surprised it's as cheap as it is. Sonic 1 was built from the ground up for Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. This game is kind of expensive if you couldn't tell, like most Saturn games. The Japanese copy is a lot cheaper, so if you want to mod your Saturn with a pretty easy chip, go ahead and do it so you can play the Japanese one, because, yeah, Sonic Jam is an interesting game. I think we might cover it later on. But yeah, all 3 Sonic games were included. I think 4 actually, I'm not too sure. I'll get to when it goes Sonic Jam. Rebuilt from the ground up, so Sonic 1, he has a spin dash, and he's not the first time that Sonic 1 will be remastered a little bit. If you want to play Sonic 1 on your Dreamcast, you can, with Sega Smash Pack Volume 1, Volume 1 of 1, because there's no other volumes. Yeah, this is just a way to play Sonic 1. Nothing too interesting to say about this, but this is how you play Sonic 1 in the Dreamcast. If you want to play on your PSP, you can as well on the Sega Genesis Collection, where Sonic was included, with pretty cheap prices. Pretty much all the games are cheap prices, so if you want to play Sonic on PSP, here you go. Sonic Mega Collection here is how a lot of people were actually introduced to the classic Sonic games in the 2000s era, myself included. It has quite a bit, so it's actually considered one of the best ways at the time. It still is, because it's quite great presentation in Mega Collection. It's also on Xbox, PS2, as well as the GameCube version. It's a pretty great way to play it, though it's, like I said, Sonic 1 isn't remastered from the ground up, so it has all the little quirks of Sonic 1 that weren't fixed in later revisions of the game. Because Sonic 1, as good as it is, it definitely has little quirks that were fixed with later release of the game, and most people who edit it usually add new little features to it to make it, a little more playable, like the spin dash, the spike glitch getting removed, and a little better momentum physics. The worst way to play Sonic 1 is Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis, official name, on the Game Boy Advance. This was a port to the GBA, a barely bad one. It was a rush port. So they slopped the ROM onto the GBA cart, and the game runs like crap. The music sounds awful, and the frame rate is super slow. There's a lot of lag, and you can just bounce on Eggman infinitely. That's how bad the gameplay is. GBA could easily port Sonic 1, but because it was just a half-assed job, it just sucks. And it's very infamous. Something so easy, Sega failed, and not just the 50th anniversary of Sonic for you. At some point, Sonic 1 was available on different eShops and online stores like the Wii and Xbox 360. Both of those are down now. There's better ways to play them, but you can mod your games to get them back on there. But at one point, you could have bought Sonic 1 for your Wii and your Xbox. And if you still want to play Sonic on your Xbox 360, you can with Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. If you couldn't tell, a very cheap game. It comes with a lot of Genesis games, so if you have 360, I'm not sure if it works for the Xbox One or Series X backwards compatibility, but there you go for a pretty cheap price for a lot of Genesis games. There's also Sonic Classic Collection on the DS. It comes with the classic Sonic games and even Sonic 3 Knuckles, but it's not the best collection for the Sonic games, especially them. Though Sonic 1 does have a save state feature, which is good because it's not a save feature. It only saves for each little act, so it's not like a game-breaking thing for some people who don't like save states. The emulation isn't the best, though. It's definitely better than the GBA version, but definitely not the best version of the game, but it's not too expensive, so if you really like the DS, here you go. Also, you can buy a Genesis controller in Sonic Generations and play Sonic 1 on Sonic Generations, so you're playing a Sonic game in a Sonic game. pretty interesting way to play Sonic 1 is on the Sega 3D Classics Collection on the 3DS. This actually includes some remastered features like a stage select feature from the get-go and spin dash, as well as some effects to make it look 3D. So it's a pretty interesting one to collect. It's actually a little more expensive side, so unless you really think that's interesting and you like the 3D idea, then you don't really need to bother. One of the best versions to play is Sonic the Hedgehog on iOS and Android, which is free. Well, it comes with ads, so you can buy it ad-free. But it's one of the best versions because it was built from the ground up, basically, using the it's not a Hedgehog engine, something else, but independently made by Christian Whitehead and Hand Cannon. It is based off a Sonic emulation that's based off the classic games, but this time a little more smooth running, spin dash added, playable extra characters, and a lot of other little bonus features, making this one the more ideal versions. Only problem, it's on your phone, and phones aren't the most fun places to play games on, at least in my opinion. And one of the last places you can find Sonic 1 is on the new release Sonic Origins Plus, and my personal ideal way to play Sonic 1. This is the mobile version, but with controller and added characters. You can play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy in Sonic 1, as well as having the ability to be Super Sonic with a 7K Emerald. It is pretty much $20 on all platforms, modern consoles being Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS4, PS5, and Steam. So it's worth picking up. And that is Sonic the Hedgehog 1991. As I said earlier, the game was a smash hit. It did everything Sega wanted to. Sonic became a household name pretty much overnight. The game did everything that Sega wanted to, and more. Sonic became a cultural icon and would lead Sega into revolutionizing the video game industry, giving Nintendo a worthy rival and actual some healthy competition in the video game industry, especially since they were really dominant Nintendo. It was necessary. Sonic, cutting edge, great, and the game is great. But hey, what do I think about the game? Well, I like Sonic 1. While a lot of people might not look back at it as one of the best games, but I think with the Sonic Origins version, which I know some people don't like Sonic Origins, I think the game works fine, especially if you're playing it for the first time. It is definitely great. I wouldn't recommend playing Sonic 1 for the first ever Sonic game, though. I think there's ones that do it better, but it is a good game, and I do recommend pretty much everyone playing it. It is a cultural milestone, and it's definitely worth picking up, especially if you haven't done it. And if this video didn't interest you at all, then, well, I guess I don't know what else to say to you. To end off this video, we're going to be doing something I'm going to do in every one of these Sonic reviews. This video was very long, so I hope you liked it and are interested in more videos, so make sure you show support. Patreon, that link below. But this is the tier list, and I'm going to describe you how I'm doing this tier list for the future videos in this video, so if you ever get confused, go back to this. So we've got all these tiers here, and what they mean: F is a terrible game, D is a bad game, C is an okay game, B is a good game, A is a great game, and S is a masterpiece. So that's my ranking, if that makes any sense. Remember? Garbage, bad, okay, good, great, masterpiece. To get out of the way, I put Flicky here in the C tier, meaning it's an okay game. It's okay. And Sonic's a good game. Sonic 1, with its modifications, goes here maybe. But Labyrinth Zone, what brings this down? One tier. Hate that level, and it makes this game hard to go back to play. And that's all I gotta say about Sonic the Hedgehog 1. This was a really long video. I mean, I expected it to be that. But yeah, I went through a lot. My voice hurts. Thank you for watching, and yeah, please show support. And if you like it, make sure you do, because I'm not sure how many of these I'm going to do, because this did take a while to do. Though, if you are interested, the next time I'm looking at Sonic the Hedgehog 8-bit version. Yeah, not Sonic 2 8-bit, because I'm going to go for every game. So I'll see you then, if you enjoy it. So, let's blast through to the next game.